Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome again, grade 9 students. Our lesson today is 80 grammar and vocabulary. Students book page 85, workbook pages 85 and 86. Here we go. As usual, let's start by having a look at our learning objectives for today. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to use the correct form of passive, present simple, or past simple in meaningful situations. 2. Match 8 words related to sports to the pictures. Now let's start with the active voice sentences. Look at this picture. Who is this player? Excellent, he is Akram Afif, the best football player here in Qatar. Now let's read the sentence. Afif always scores amazing goals. Let's have this question. What is the subject of this sentence? What do you think? Great, it's Afif. Afif is the subject of the sentence. It comes at the beginning of the sentence, followed by the verb, then the object. Now let's have another question. Who scores amazing goals? What do you think? Great, it's Afif as well. So here, Afif is the agent. He is the real subject or the doer of the action. He is the one who scores amazing goals. In this case, when the subject of the sentence and the real doer or the agent of the action are the same, we call this active voice sentence. Now let's have a look at passive voice sentences. This is Akram Afif. Let's read the sentence. Amazing goals are scored by Afif. Now let's have this question. What is the subject of this sentence? What do you think? Wonderful. It's amazing goals. So amazing goals is the subject of the sentence. It comes at the beginning of the sentence, followed by the verb, then by plus the agent. Now let's have this question. Who is the doer? Who is the agent of the action? Who is the doer of the action? The action is scoring goals. Who is the doer of the action? Very good, it's Afif. So notice here that the subject of the sentence and the real doer of the action or the agent are different. When the subject and the agent or the real doer of the action are different, we call this passive voice sentence. Let's have a look at the function of passive. When to use passive voice. There are different situations, one of which is to emphasize the action rather than who or what is responsible for it. So what's more important is the action itself, not the doer or the agent of the action. For example, our school was built in 2010. Here, building of the school is more important than the one who built it. So we use passive. Another example is the bell is rung at the end of each class at school. We focus on bell ringing, not on the one who rings it. So we use passive. Another situation in which we can use passive is when we don't know who the agent is. For example, my files were deleted. I don't know who deleted my files. In this case, I use passive. My car is scratched. I don't know who scratches my car. So I use passive. Could you please open your student's book, page 89. 2. Grammar. Passive voice, present simple and past simple. Read the examples below. You will have some examples in the next slide. Do the sentences in the active voice have the same meaning as the ones in the passive voice? So we are going to find out whether the sentences in the active voice have similar meaning as those in the passive voice or not. Which ones focus on the person doing the action? Which of the sentences in the active voice or in the passive voice focus on the person doing the action? Which ones focus on the action? Which of the sentences in the active voice or in the passive voice focus on the action itself? Okay, now let's go to the sentences. Let's start with the active voice sentences. People play basketball on indoor or outdoor courts. James Naismith invented basketball in 1891. Now let's read the passive sentences. Basketball is played on indoor or outdoor courts. Basketball was invented by James Naismith in 1891. Now, could you please pause the video and try to answer the questions in the previous slide? Go ahead. Okay, let's start with the first question. Do the sentences in the active voice have the same meaning as those in the passive voice? What do you think? Excellent. Yes, they do. The sentences have the same meaning. Now, let's move on to the second question. Which of the sentences focus on the person doing the action? Great. The active sentences focus on the person doing the action. In the active voice sentences here we start with people, which is the real doer of the action, and here we start with James Naismith, who is the real doer of the action. He's the one who invented basketball. Now, which of the sentences focus on the action itself? Wonderful. The sentences in the passive. In passive sentences, the focus is on the action itself. So here we start with the object. So our focus is on the object, on the action itself. Basketball is played. So here we focus on the action. Basketball was invented by James Smith in 1891. So the focus here is on inventing the basketball, on the action itself, not on the doer of the action. Well done, students. Now, let's go to Task B, Students Book, page 89. Read the examples again and complete the rules. As we have said before, in active voice sentences, we start with the subject, then we use the main verb, then we use the object. Now, what about the passive voice sentence? How do we form passive voice sentences? What I want you to do now is to pause the video, go back to the previous sentences, and try to complete this rule. Go ahead. Okay, now let's complete it together. In the passive voice sentences, first we use the subject. Then we use verb. Which verbs do we use? Plus past participle. Yes, what do you think? Excellent. We use the verb be. Now, do you still remember the be verbs? What are verbs to be? Very good. They are am, is, are in present, and was or were in the past. So in passive voice sentences, we use subject plus verb to be, one of these. Then we use the past participle of what? Very good. The past participle of the main verb. Then we can use by plus the agent. Now, what I want you to remember, you can find a list of the verbs, the irregular verbs in Students Book, page 127. In the passive voice, we use the past participle, and this is the past participle of these verbs. For example, beat, beaten, become, become, lend, lent, let, let, and so on. So please don't forget to always read the irregular verbs in Students Book, page 127. Let's study this example about present simple passive. The active voice sentence says, Vicky sends a letter. Subject, verb, object. If we want to change the sentence into passive, what do we do? First, we bring the object of the active sentence and put it as a subject of our new sentence. Then we look at the tense. If it is present simple, we put am, is, or are. As the object is singular, only one letter we use is. Then we change the present simple verb to past participle. So it becomes a letter is sent, then we use by plus the agent by Vicky. Now another example about present simple passive. Let's see. Doctors help patients. Subject, verb, object. Patients, the object. As the tense is present simple, we use are because patients is a plural noun, followed by helped, the past participle of the verb, by doctor. Patients are helped by doctors. Now let's move on to the past simple passive and how to form sentences in past simple passive. First, let's have a look at this active voice sentence. Fatima fed the baby. So Fatima is the subject, it's the real doer. Then we have the word fed, which is a verb in the past simple. Then we have the object, which is the baby. If we want to change it into passive, first we use the object, the baby. Then we look at the verb. The verb here is in the past simple. If the verb is in the past simple, you should use was or were. Here the subject of our new sentence is singular, the baby, so we use was. So it becomes the baby was, then the past participle of the verb fed, which is fed. So the baby was fed, then we use by plus the agent, by Fatima. Another sentence in the past simple passive. Let's first read the active voice one. Architects designed buildings. In the passive voice, it becomes buildings, the object. The tense is in the past, so we use either was or were. Here we use were because the new subject of our sentence is in the plural form, so we use were. Then the past participle of the verb designed, which is designed, so it becomes buildings were designed by architects, by plus the agent. Now let's move on to exercise C, students book, page 89. Complete with the present simple passive or the past simple passive of the verbs in brackets. Here we have 6 sentences with some verbs in brackets. Now you are going to pause the video, read the sentences, and put these verbs in the correct form, either present simple passive or past simple passive. Go ahead. Okay, now let's do the first one. What do you think the correct answer is? Excellent. It was built. Why? Because here we are talking about the past. We have 2019. And Al Janoub Stadium is singular. So we use was plus the past participle of the verb built, which is built. Now number 2, what do you think the answer is? Wonderful is spoken. Why? Because here the sentence talks about a fact, which is Spanish is spoken in many countries in South America as well as in Spain. So we use the present simple passive. Spain is singular, Spanish is singular, so we use is plus the past participle of the verb speak, which is spoken. Now what do you think the correct answer for number 3 is? Wonderful. It's are used. Why? Because we are talking about nowadays. So the tense is present simple. And as computer is a plural noun, so we use are plus the past participle of the verb use, which is used. In sentence number 4, what do you think the answer is? Brilliant. It was chosen. Why? Because we are talking about something that happened before. Salman is excited. Why? Because he was chosen to play for the university basketball team. So this action happened before. And the subject here is singular. So we use was plus past participle of the verb choose. Now number 5, what do you think the answer is? Wonderful. It is watched. But why? Because we are talking about an event which is watched by millions of Americans every year. Every year indicates that the action is in the present simple. As an event is a singular noun, so we use is plus the past participle of the verb watch, which is watched. And the last sentence, wonderful. It's where asked. Why? Because we are talking about yesterday's practice, an action that happened in the past. So we should use past simple passive. The players is a plural noun, so we use where, plus the past participle of the verb ask, which is asked. Well done, students. Now, could you please open your workbook, page 85. Circle the correct answers. Here we have some sentences. You are going to read each sentence and choose the correct answer, either in the passive or in the active. Could you please pause the video and do the task? Go ahead. Now, could you please check your answers? Now, let's move to exercise D. Use the prompts to write sentences in active and passive voice. Here we have some prompts. You are going to use these prompts to write two sentences, one in active and the second in passive. Now, could you please pause the video and do the task? Go ahead. Now, you are requested to check your answers. Now, dear student, let's move on to another task. Could you please open your student's book, page 89. 3. Vocabulary. Listen, read, and match the pictures with the verbs in the box. Now look here. Here we have 8 verbs, and here we have 8 pictures. What we are going to do now is to pause the video, listen to the verbs, and then try to match each verb to the picture it describes.
3. Vocabulary. Listen, read, and match the pictures with the verbs in the box. Hit, shoot, catch, pass, dribble, kick, throw, bounce.
Okay, now let's match the verbs to the pictures. Now look at the first picture. What do you think the first picture is? Which of these verbs describes the first picture? Excellent. It's throw. Now, in which sports do we throw something? Can you give me examples of sports in which we throw something? Great. In throwing javelin and hammer. Now look at the second picture. What does this picture show? Great. It shows pass the ball. Now could you give me examples of sports in which we pass the ball? Great. In football and in basketball. Now could you please go to the third picture? What does this picture show? Excellent. It shows catch. Now, in which sports do we catch the ball? Great. In football, rugby, and American football. Look at the fourth picture. Which of these verbs describes this picture? Excellent. It's kick. Now, in which sports do we kick the ball? Very good. We kick the ball in football, for example. Now, let's go to picture number 5. What does this picture show? Excellent. It's shoot. Now, in which sports do we shoot the ball? Very good. In football and basketball. Now, let's go to picture number 6. What does this picture show? Excellent. It shows the verb bounce. Now, in which sports do we use this skill, bouncing the ball? In which sport do we bounce the ball? Excellent. And we use it in basketball. Now the second one, number 7. What does this picture show? Very good. It shows hit. Now, in which sport do we hit the ball? Great. In racket sports like squash and tennis. And the last picture, what does this picture show? Wonderful. It shows dribble. Now, in which sport do we see players dribbling? Excellent. In football and basketball. Well done, students. Thank you very much. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. See you later.